My name is Jennifer Copeland, and I greet you on behalf of the 18 denominations that are members of the North Carolina Council of Church. In these Holy Week days, hear these words from the Gospel according to John, reading in the 13th chapter. After saying this, Jesus was troubled in spirit and declared, "Very truly I tell you, one of you will betray me." The disciples looked at one another, uncertain of whom he was speaking. One of his disciples, the one whom Jesus loved, was reclining next to him. Simon Peter therefore motioned to him to ask Jesus of whom he was speaking. So while reclining next to Jesus, he asked him, "Lord, who is it?" Jesus answered, "It is the one to whom I give this piece of bread when I have dipped it into the dish." So when he had dipped the piece of bread, he gave it to Judas, son of Simon Iscariot. After Judas received the piece of bread, Satan entered into him. Jesus said to him, "Do quickly what you are going to do." Now no one at the table knew why he said this to him. Some thought that because Judas had the common purse, Jesus was telling him, "Buy what we need for the festival," or that he should give them something to the poor. But after receiving the piece of bread, Judas immediately went out, and it was night. When he had gone out, Jesus said, "Now the Son of Man has been glorified, and God has glorified in him. If God has been glorified in him, God will also glorify him in himself and will glorify him at once." This, my friends, is the word of the Lord. You may know, like I do, that libraries are full of books questioning Judas' motives for betraying Jesus. It had to be more than the 30 pieces of silver. Some people think that Judas was impatient, that he wanted to force Jesus' hand and bring those Roman officials more quickly into the arena. Judas thinking perhaps, enough of the parables, let's get folks out here with swords and clubs and see what we are made of. And I have to confess, I'm an apologist for Judas. When I was in college, I wrote my final paper for New Testament on Judas. Nobody else did that. Maybe greed did provide all the encouragement Judas needed, but I like the more complicated hypothesis. I think Judas wanted things to be the way he wanted them to be. So he tried to take control. He slipped out after supper to tip off the authorities about where Jesus was going next. Of course, Judas wasn't in control that night any more than we control the spread of the coronavirus. That virus has a mind of its own. It is aided, of course, by people who don't use common sense and who spread false information. But during Holy Week, I try to make an extra effort to remember life lessons about control, and then to absorb what it means to live by hope, not to live by optimism. Optimism is too much like self-confidence. It looks too much like Judas trying to be in control. Hope is different. Hope isn't this Pollyanna pop psychology claim that, oh, if we just hang in here until April 30th, things will get better. Sometimes things don't get better. They didn't get better for Judas. Hope is not about things getting better. Hope means living with a different standard than we've grown accustomed to. It actually means living a little bit out of control. If you go back and look at the scene from the gospel reading today with Judas and Jesus, Jesus was, according to John, troubled in spirit. Why would he be troubled in spirit when he knows exactly who is going to betray him? But he is troubled in spirit, not in control. Judas, on the other hand, thinks that he has everything all planned out. We'll meet in the garden under the cover of darkness. The soldiers, the disciples will rumble. He thinks he's in control, but his plan went downhill from there. And for the one not in control, the one who Hebrews tells us is the pioneer and perfecter of our faith, well, things don't go well for him either. He suffers ridicule, shame, and ultimately death. But the difference between these two scenarios, between these two characters in the scene, the difference is hope. Judas is acting out of a sense of hopelessness. He doesn't believe things are going the way they should be going. He mistrusts the events, doesn't think it will happen faithfully unless he manipulates it. Jesus, on the other hand, responds to what is seemingly a hopeless series of events with the assurance that manipulation by him is not only unnecessary, but in the end, it would be impossible. There's really no need to bore you with the details of my life. They're not spectacularly more different than anyone else's. They're just my details, and so I know a little bit more about them. I also know that most people can match me trial for trial. That's not really the point. The point is that in the midst of what have been some really very real difficulties, I can tell you with unwavering certainty that living by hope works. But this is how it works. To live by hope doesn't mean that I always get my way. It means, in good Quaker parlance, that the way I get becomes my way. The way that is given to me becomes my way. And it is most assuredly a way that would not have been possible if I had been in control. In these Holy Week days, days that we and our friends will talk about for the rest of our lives, when we talk about these days, may it be said of us, we lived in hope. Blessings to each of you during this hope-filled Holy Week. Peace of Christ. Amen.